I guess you love movies. I do too. Hi guys, and welcome back to another movie list video. It has been a while since my last two movie lists. And today we're going to be starting a new segment on my channel. I'm going to be talking about all the different movie genres, and I'm going to be talking about my 10 favourite movies from that genre. Today we're going to be starting with comedies. I'm a massive fan of comedies, don't really get the credit they deserve a lot of the time, sort of big lists and so on. So I'm going to get into a lot of my favourite comedies. I'm going to talk about different types of comedies and my favourite types of favourite comedies in those types. So first of all, I'm going to start with spoof comedies. There's some great ones out there, of course. Mel Brooks is brilliant at this, spoofing many different genres and styles of filmmaking. My favourite being Young Frankenstein, and also more recently Edgar Wright with films like Shaun of the Dead and The World's End. But for my first pick on this list, I'm going to be talking about one of my favourite comedies of all time, and one that I rewatch a lot of the time, and that is Airplane. This is a brilliant spoof movie, okay? So it spoofs so many different types of films, so many different types of genres in this movie: disaster movies, dance movies, war movies, romance movies. It really spoofs so many different types of films in one film that it really is the king of spoofs. And I absolutely adore Airplane for how varied it is, and however many times you see Airplane, you see different jokes because you remember certain ones from the last time you saw it, and then you watch it again and you realise other jokes that you maybe would have missed the last time. It really is a gag-a-minute movie, a gag-a-second movie. It's incredibly funny, and there's so many jokes that you will miss some, but you will catch others, and it's so great that you have such a variety of jokes, because you really can catch these great jokes every so often that I really enjoy. And of course it's a classic. Obviously there's Airplane 2, which is nowhere near as good, but the first one is an absolute classic that I adore and is one of the best spoof movies of all time. Another great spoof movie coming in at number 9, and that for me is Hot Fuzz. Now I could talk about Shaun of the Dead, which I already mentioned is one of my honourable mentions on this list. It's a very good movie as a spoof of the zombie movie. However, Shaun of the Dead is very good. I think that Hot Fuzz is just a little bit better. It's a funnier movie in my opinion, and it's just more well-rounded as a comedy. Obviously, it's a spoof of sort of 90s action movies, of cop movies, and also kind of conspiracy movies. And it's just a really entertaining time. Edgar Wright edits this movie incredibly. I love how he edits films. They're so energetic and brilliantly made. The action's really fun. It's super entertaining. I love the sort of references to Point Break and stuff like that. It's really great. I really enjoy Hot Fuzz. I'm a massive fan of Edgar Wright, as you would know if you've seen my review of Baby Driver. I'm a big fan of him as a filmmaker. And Hot Fuzz is still my favourite one of his movies. I continue to watch it. It's very entertaining. The chemistry between Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, of course, is brilliant. But the way they spoof these, specifically the 90s action movies, I really enjoy in this movie. And it's definitely, along with Airplane, one of the best spoof movies of all time. Next on the list is going to be, at number 8, we're going to be talking about dark comedies. Now, obviously, there's a lot of dark humour in films that we laugh at, maybe we shouldn't. Some of the best dark comedies come from actually outside of America, in my opinion. A movie like 8½" by Fellini, which is a brilliant art house film and a great examination of self. It's an incredibly complex film, but it's also a dark comedy about the absurd nature and sort of, chaotic nature of this man's life, Guido, which I really enjoy. However, that isn't my pick for this specific slot. The film I'm going to pick, it's been spoofed many times. Snatch did it probably the best, but not as good as the original. And my favourite dark comedy of all time, coming in at number 8, is going to be Pulp Fiction. So, yeah, I picked Pulp Fiction in a comedy list. That might seem insane to people, but tell me you haven't watched Pulp Fiction and laughed. Hell of a lot. Now, Pulp Fiction is a crime film. Obviously, it has a brilliant, discontinued narrative. It's not, in one straight line. It goes back and forth and side to side. And that's what makes it so incredibly entertaining and so incredibly rewatchable, because you can't remember exactly what comes next every time you see it. And that's what I love about the film. However, this is definitely a dark comedy. Definitely. There's so many dark moments in this film, and there's always undercurrents of humour in every single scene. I mean, someone gets anal raped, someone nearly dies of an overdose of heroin, and there's always humour in this movie, always. Specifically when John Travolta's character as Vincent Vega accidentally shoots a guy in the back of his car when they go over a speed bump is probably one of the funniest scenes I've ever seen in a movie. Tell me you didn't laugh incredibly loudly when you saw that happen, when you first saw it and saw Pulp Fiction. Because you shouldn't laugh. Someone died, but it's hilarious. And that is, you know, the epitome of dark comedy, taking an incredibly dark moment and making it incredibly funny. And Pulp Fiction does that perfectly, along with a load of other things that I love about the movie. Now, into number 7, we're going to go back in time a little bit. We're going to be talking about silent comedy. So, there's a lot of silent comedies that I really like. Honourable mentions go to The General by Buster Keaton and The Gold Rush in Modern Times by Chaplin. However, I'm going to pick another Chaplin for this slot at number 7, and that is going to be City Lights, another movie I've reviewed on my channel before. I absolutely love this movie, it's brilliant. The boxing scene is fantastic. What I love about silent comedy is that they don't use, obviously they can't use dialogue, they don't have that asset, so visual storytelling, visual comedy, physical comedy is so important in these movies, and specifically the boxing scene in City Lights, which is absolutely hilarious. I absolutely adore it. But I love City Lights for so many other reasons. It's such a sweet, innocent film, and it's also such a brilliant film, the examination of, you know, how important it is to love somebody for who they are, and not for what's on the outside, but what's on the inside. And it's a brilliant romantic comedy, but mainly it's one of the best silent comedies of all time, and probably one of my favourite silent movies ever. I love City Lights. Now we're going into number 6 now, and I'm going to be talking about my favourite romantic comedies. Now, a lot of people hate romantic comedies, a lot of people think they're awful, and there are a lot of really, really bad ones out there. However, every genre has good films, otherwise the genre wouldn't exist. That's what I say anyway. And the first one I am going to talk about is going to be Groundhog Day. Now, yeah, Groundhog Day is a romantic comedy, and it's amazing. I love it. I absolutely love Groundhog Day. It's brilliant. Okay, it's one of the most inventive romantic comedies ever made. Obviously, a guy repeats the same day over and over again, and ends up realising what the problems in his own life are, and his ego, and how he needs to change himself in order to have a happier existence. It's a brilliant film. It teaches you things. It's incredibly entertaining. The suicide montage is hilarious. That could be a dark comedy all on its own, but this is a brilliant romantic comedy. It's so inventive and brilliantly made. I really enjoy the script in this movie, and of course Bill Murray is hilarious as always, as he is in more or less everything he's in. I love Bill Murray, he's great. Now, my next romantic comedy that I'm going to talk about, at number 5, is going to be a Woody Allen movie. There's many good Woody Allen romantic comedies like Manhattan, and what's it, what is it called? The Purple Rose of Cairo, that's the one I was trying to think of. They're both really great, I really enjoy them. He's probably a king of a romantic comedy. But my favourite Woody Allen romantic comedy has to be Annie Hall, simply because Annie Hall is just an incredibly inventive film. Once again, the romantic comedy can be so stale and boring, and it tends to be stuck in the same sort of rut and the same sort of, you know, formula. But Annie Hall is so good because it subverts that formula, and it comes out and says, I'm a movie and I'm going to entertain you, and I'm going to do some weird stuff, and I'm going to do some really interesting jokes. And Annie Hall just does some really interesting things with narrative and really interesting things with movie making. You know, the subtitles scene is so great, the scene where he's talking to people on the street. I'm not even going to get into Vibrating Egg because I will die laughing. That scene is hilarious. Annie Hall is a great film, and a fantastic romantic comedy to boot. Now, at number 4, I'm going to be talking about a kind of subgenre of the romantic comedy from the late 1930s, early 1940s, and the king of that genre was Howard Hawks. Now, there's definitely more movies in this genre I need to see, Philadelphia Story, Bringing Up Baby, and so on, but so far, my favourite has to be His Girl Friday at number 4. Now, you know I love His Girl Friday, I've talked about it on my review. It's absolutely fantastic. It's got some of the best dialogue ever. You can tell how Quentin Tarantino, obviously also on this list with Pulp Fiction, was inspired by the brilliant dialogue in this movie. It's some of the best dialogue I've ever heard. It's a battle of the sexes comedy. It's so entertaining and funny to listen to. Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell are brilliant together in this film. It's also a great satire. It's a mixture of all different comedies, but obviously it is at its heart, a screwball comedy, and a fantastic one at that. Now, at number 3, I'm going to be talking about another type of comedy. Now, there's obviously many different types of comedy, and in this section I'm going to be talking about farce. Now, so obviously that's absurd situations and, you know, that really wouldn't happen in real life, people doing absurd and silly things, and in terms sort of, you know, farcical situations. And my favourite movie with this, there's a lot of comedies out there that have this similar sort of background, but I have to go with, in terms of farcical situations, I talked about Mel Brooks earlier, and I'm going to talk about my favourite Mel Brooks movie now. I'm going to talk about The Producers, because The Producers is one of the funniest movies ever made. And it is absolutely hilarious. And tell me this isn't a farcical situation. You know, a Broadway screenwriter and his solicitor, his lawyer, have to write or find the worst script of all time in order to make a horrific loss, as in a money-making scheme to try and save their careers. And it's absolutely hilarious. And they end up making one of the funniest plays I've ever seen. A play about the Nazis. It's a musical about the Nazis. This movie is absolutely hilarious, and maybe for the politically correct generation that we now live in, where, you know, everything is offensive, this movie may not be for everyone. But I'm not easily offended. I take things as they come, and this is an incredibly hilarious film. Zero Mostel, Gene Wilder, both brilliant in this movie, and I absolutely adore The Producers, and it's definitely, in my opinion, the best farce ever made. Now, on to number 2, just missing out on the top spot, but really this isn't really ranked, it's just talking about certain genres in comedy. I'm going to be talking about my favourite satire. It's Dr. Strangelove. I'm just going to get it out there. It's absolutely brilliant. I absolutely adore this movie. Altman has made some really good satires. Nashville, to a lesser extent, even though that's more of a drama. And MASH is fantastic. But Dr. Strangelove is unsurpassed in the satire genre, specifically the fact that this movie was made during the Cold War. Literally an incredible, incredible movie. Peter Sellers is fantastic in this film, so is George C. Scott and Sterling Hayden, all incredibly hilarious characters in this brilliant satire of the Cold War, and one of Stanley Kubrick's best movies. I absolutely adore it. Now, at number 1, this is actually my favourite comedy of all time. I'm going to be talking about absurdist comedy. And if I'm talking about absurdist comedy, I have to talk about Monty Python. And I love Life of Brian, but I love Holy Grail even more. My favourite comedy of all time. It's absolutely hilarious. So much crazy, insane things happen in this movie. Like, literally, people catapult cows at people. There's a French guy that tells somebody that he's going to make castanets out of his testicles. It's literally insane, but it's one of the funniest films I've ever seen. It's truly brilliant. Monty Python's masterpiece. Absolutely insane, absurdist, but brilliant. And my favourite comedy of all time. So there you go. That's my top 10 favourite comedies of all time. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, like, subscribe, or comments down in the section below. Let me know some of your favourite comedies of all time. Really interested to see what you think. What video do you think I should do next? What genre? Let me know in the comment section below. And hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Goodbye.